Even with the stitches from the surgery, my daughter-in-law tossed my suitcases onto the floor. She never imagined I had the original deed tucked away in the desk drawer. I never thought I would return from the hospital only to find my own humiliation waiting for me at the front door. Today I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. If, for even a second, you feel like this sounds familiar, please just leave a like and subscribe. It'll help me keep venting. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and until 3 days ago, I believed my family respected me. I thought that after 40 years of taking care of everyone, sacrificing my dreams for theirs, and working since I was 15 to give them the best, I would at least have a dignified place in my own home. How naive I was. The taxi stopped in front of the house in Westwood, Los Angeles, where I had lived for the last 5 years. The same house I bought with my inheritance money, combined with a lifetime of savings from cleaning corporate towers in downtown LA, DTLA. The stitches from the gallbladder surgery tugged with every breath, and the doctor had been clear. Eleanor, you need absolute rest. No strain, no lifting weight. Your body needs to heal. I rang the bell, expecting my daughter, Chloe, to open the door with a smile, to ask how the hospital stay went, or if I'd eaten anything. Instead, the door flew open, and there stood my daughter-in-law, Piper Jensen, with that cold look I knew all too well. "Oh, you're finally here," she said, without offering to help me get the 2 small suitcases out of the cab. "We hope you didn't bring much because there's no room for you here anymore." A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the LA air conditioning. "What do you mean, no room? This is my house, Piper. I pay the mortgage on this place." "It was your house," she corrected, with a smile that chilled my blood. "Things have changed, Eleanor. You'll see." I dragged my suitcases inside, feeling how every movement strained the fresh wound in my abdomen. The foyer smelled of cheap disinfectant and something else. The stench of finalized decisions. The most painful scene of my life awaited me in the living room, my belongings piled up in cardboard moving boxes, like trash waiting to be hauled away. "What is this?" I asked, though my heart already knew the answer. Chloe emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. My daughter, the child I had birthed with such love, who I had raised alone after her father walked out on us, looked at me as if I were an annoying stranger. "Mom, we need to talk," she said without approaching, without asking how I felt after 3 days in the hospital. "Piper and I have been thinking, this house is too small for 3 adults. And well, you're getting older. You can't take care of yourself anymore." "What are you talking about, Chloe? I just got out of the hospital. The doctor said I'll be as good as new in 2 weeks. Piper let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, Eleanor, don't get your hopes up. At your age? Besides, we need privacy. Chloe and I want to start a family, adopt a child, and we can't do that with you here just getting in the way." The phrase, "getting in the way," pierced me like a knife. After everything I had done for them, after having worked double shifts so Chloe could go to college, after moving into this house when she got married to help them with expenses, I was a burden. "But I pay for this house," I murmured, feeling my voice crack. "With my Social Security, with my savings." "You paid," Chloe corrected with a coldness I hadn't known she possessed. "Not anymore. Piper got a high-level job at an investment firm, dealing with global stocks. She earns serious money. We don't need your help anymore." Piper stepped closer, and with utter disregard for my fresh stitches, grabbed one of my suitcases and hurled it toward the front door. The suitcase burst open midair, and my underwear, my medication, my few pieces of jewelry spilled onto the rug like refuse. "Piper!" I cried, trying to bend down to gather my things, but the pain in my abdomen stopped me. "I have stitches. I can't bend over." "Well, you should have thought about that before you became so useless," she retorted, unmoved. "Look, Eleanor, this is how it is. We've already spoken to the staff at a senior residence in the Inland Empire. It's a nice place, with gardens, 24-hour nurses. You'll be better cared for there." "A residence?" Tears started rolling down my wrinkled cheeks. "But I'm fine. I just need a few days to recover." "Enough!" Chloe shouted. And for the first time in years, I saw the spoiled child who sometimes emerged when she didn't get her way. "I'm tired of taking care of you. I'm tired of your complaining, your illnesses. of having you here constantly reminding me that I'm going to get old just like you. The silence that followed was deafening. Not even the hum of traffic from Westwood filtered through the windows. Only the sound of my heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. Piper swiftly gathered the rest of my things, shoving them forcefully into the suitcases. The cab is waiting outside. We already paid the first month's fee for the residence. Consider it a going-away gift. With what money? I asked, though I already guessed the answer. With yours, Chloe said without blinking. Piper has had access to your account since you signed those papers last year, remember? When you said you trusted us more than the banks. I remembered that day. It was after a neighbor told me how scammers had stolen her life savings over the phone. Piper had offered to help me with my finances. She had been so convincing, so affectionate. It's just to protect you, Ellie. We know about investments, how to make your money grow. Now I understood everything. My assets, my life savings, the deed to the house I had bought with so much effort. Everything was in their hands. Or so they thought. While Piper dragged my suitcases toward the door and Chloe washed her hands as if trying to erase any trace of guilt, I remembered something they didn't know. Something I had kept as insurance all these years. In the secret drawer of the desk in my bedroom, wrapped in an old kitchen towel, were the original deeds to this house. The real ones. The ones my mother had left me before she died, with a very clear condition written in her own hand. This house is for Eleanor Hayes, and no one else. Let no one make her feel less in her own home. Piper and Chloe thought they had won. They thought a 68-year-old woman, fresh from surgery and seemingly helpless, would allow herself to be thrown away like an old rag. They didn't know they had awakened the lioness that had been sleeping inside me for years. As the taxi pulled away, carrying me toward an uncertain future, I clutched the key I always carried with me in my purse. The key to the desk where I kept my true assets, my true power. They had my money, but I had something much more valuable. The truth. And the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way to come out. The Golden Age Estates senior residence in the Inland Empire had no Golden Age feel, and the only sunset visible was that of the hopes of those who arrived there. The smell of disinfectant mixed with old urine hit me in the face like a slap when I stepped through the foggy glass door. A nurse in a stained uniform and a look of exhaustion greeted me with a smile as fake as the dentures of the woman crying in the corner of the lobby. Mrs. Hayes, right? Your daughter's already explained your situation. Advanced cognitive decline, episodes of aggression, inability to care for yourself. The nurse read from a yellow folder while I looked on in disbelief. Don't worry, you'll be well taken care of here. Excuse me, but I don't have dementia, I protested, feeling the surgery stitches pull with every word. I just got out of the hospital for a gallbladder operation. My mind is perfectly fine. The nurse looked at me with that condescension reserved for the elderly. They no longer consider whole people. Sure. They all say that at first. You'll get used to it. I was assigned a room I shared with an 80-year-old woman named Eliza, who spent her days talking to photographs of children who never visited her. The bed was rock hard. The sheets smelled of bleach and sadness, and the window overlooked a concrete patio where withered geraniums struggled to survive in cracked pots. That first night, while Eliza mumbled prayers to her photographs, I lay awake remembering how I had ended up there. Not by accident, not by bad luck, but by 40 years of sacrifices that were never valued, of love that was never reciprocated. I remembered when Chloe was 8 and got pneumonia. I worked all day cleaning offices and at night in a dry cleaner just to pay for her medication. For 3 weeks, I slept in a chair next to her hospital bed, living only on coffee and crackers because every penny counted for her treatment. When she recovered, the first thing she said to me was, "Mommy, why are you so ugly? You have more wrinkles." I remembered when she turned 16 and wanted a sweet 16 party that cost the equivalent of 4 months of my salary. I sold my gold earrings, the only ones my mother had ever given me, and worked extra weekends for 6 months. The party was perfect. Chloe looked beautiful in her pink dress, danced the waltz with her godfather, blew out the candles surrounded by envious friends. I served the food in the kitchen, my hands stained with grease and my heart full of pride. Not a single photo from that night included me. I remembered when she met Piper in college. I had worked triple shifts to pay for her administration degree, living for 4 years on tortillas with salt and refried beans. Chloe introduced Piper as my roommate, and I was so naive I thought they were just studious friends. Until they arrived together one Sunday for dinner, and Piper put her hand on Chloe's in a way that left no doubt. "Mom, Piper and I are a couple," Chloe announced while I served the signature Sunday lasagna that had taken me all morning to prepare. "We're getting married." I dropped the serving spoon into the pot, not because of prejudice about her sexual orientation, but because in that moment, I understood that the entire future I had imagined for her, all the dreams of grandchildren running through the house, of a traditional family that would give me a respected place as a grandmother, vanished like smoke. But I adapted, as I always had. Piper needed money to complete her MBA in finance, so I took out a second mortgage on the small house I inherited from my mother in Pasadena Heights. "It's an investment in our family's future," Chloe had told me with those bright eyes she always used when she needed something from me. Piper graduated with honors and got a job at a firm handling investment portfolios in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Her first salary was 3 times what I made in a year, but she never paid me back for the loan. "Your investment is paying off, Ellie," she would say every time she came home with new clothes or expensive gadgets. "Our success is your success." When they got married, they insisted I move in with them to a bigger house in Westwood. "So you're not alone, Mom. So we can take better care of you." I sold my small Pasadena Heights house and put all the money down for the deposit on the new house. Piper made me sign papers that, she claimed, gave me legal protection as a co-owner of the property. Lies. It was all lies wrapped in fake affection. For the next 5 years, I became their unpaid domestic employee. I cooked, cleaned, did their laundry, and bought groceries with my Social Security check. They came home from work talking about multi-million-dollar investments, high-net-worth clients, dividends, and dollar gains, while I scrubbed the dishes from their gourmet dinner. "Eleanor, could you make us that signature Sunday lasagna we love?" Piper would ask on Sundays, while she and Chloe stayed in bed until noon watching Netflix series. And I, like a fool, would get up at 5 in the morning to have everything ready when they woke up. They never invited me to their social gatherings. "They're work events, Mom. Very formal. You wouldn't be comfortable," Chloe would say when I saw them getting dressed up to go to expensive restaurants or the opera. I stayed home watching reality TV and eating their leftovers. When I got sick with my gallbladder and the pain prevented me from cooking or cleaning with the same efficiency, the poisonous comments started. "You're not pulling your weight like you used to, Eleanor. Maybe you should consider living somewhere you can be better cared for. We don't want you to suffer unnecessarily trying to do things you can't manage anymore." The day they took me to the hospital for surgery, Piper made me sign medical authorization papers while I was sedated with the pre-medication. "It's routine, Ellie, so we can make decisions if anything goes wrong." Now, lying in that assisted living bed that reeked of abandonment, I understood what I had really signed. Papers that gave them legal power over my finances, my medical decisions, my entire life. But there was one thing they didn't know, something I kept secret all these years, even when desperation made me consider telling them. The Westwood house wasn't the only thing I owned. In addition to the deed I kept in the secret drawer, I had a savings account at a different bank. An account I had opened under my maiden name and fed every month with a small amount from my Social Security. Not much, but enough. For 5 years, I had set aside $200 a month, telling them it was for medical expenses. I also had my mother's jewelry, hidden in a safe deposit box at the same bank. They weren't of great monetary value, but they included a set of pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother and a small diamond ring my mother had inherited from hers. And, most importantly, I had connections. 50 years of working as a domestic employee taught me that servicewomen are invisible to the rich, but we see each other. I knew women who cleaned for law firms, notaries, and government offices. Women who, like me, had spent decades being underestimated by people who thought cleaning floors meant having a dirty brain. Eliza stopped mumbling and moved closer to my bed in the darkness. "Can't you sleep, honey?" "No," I whispered. "I'm planning how to get my life back." "Oh, child," she said with a toothless but wise smile. "At our age, you don't get anything back. You just get even." Her words hung in the stale air of the room, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. She was right. It wasn't time to recover. It was time to settle scores. The days at Golden Age Estates dragged like dying snails. Every morning I woke up hoping Chloe would appear at the door begging for forgiveness, telling me it had all been a terrible misunderstanding. But weeks passed, and the only visit I received was from a social worker who came to evaluate my mental state. "Mrs. Hayes, do you know what day it is?" asked a young woman with thick glasses and a folder full of forms. Her name was Sarah, and she had that condescending attitude people adopt when they think speaking louder makes you understand better. "It's Tuesday, October 15th, I replied without hesitation. "I've been here for 3 weeks, and every day that passes, I am more certain this is a mistake." Sarah scribbled something in her folder. "Your daughters told me you sometimes have episodes of confusion, that you forget to take your medication, that you accuse people of stealing things you actually misplace." I felt a burn in my chest that had nothing to do with the surgery. "What else did they tell you?" "Well," Sarah consulted her notes professionally. "They mentioned that you handle money irresponsibly, that you hide bills in strange places and then don't remember where you put them. Also, that lately you've become aggressive with them, accusing them of things without foundation." Every word was a calculated stab. Chloe and Piper had built a profile of a senile, troubled woman to justify my confinement. They had planted the seeds of my supposed madness in every person who might help me. "And you believe them?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the fury boiling inside me. Sarah looked at me with that expression I knew too well. The same one the nurses used when I insisted I didn't need help bathing. The same one the doctor had when I asked him to check the medication they were giving me without my consent. "Mrs. Hayes, it's normal for older adults to resist accepting help. But your daughters only want what's best for you." That night, after the lights were out and Eliza began her nightly murmuring, I stayed awake, planning. I couldn't continue to be the passive victim of this story. I had to find a way to communicate with the outside world, to access my hidden resources. The next day, during recreational activities, which consisted of watching daytime soaps on a bad reception TV, I approached Carmela, a 70-year-old woman who had been an executive secretary before her family institutionalized her for memory problems. "Carmela," I whispered while pretending to pay attention to the screen, "are you also here for your family's convenience?" She looked at me with eyes that shone with a lucidity that contrasted with the dementia diagnosis on her file. "Honey, half the women here are perfectly sane. It's just that our families found a legal way to get rid of us and keep our assets." "How is that possible?" "Very easily." Carmela looked around to make sure no one was listening. "First, they make you sign papers for your safety. Then they get a couple of doctors to certify that you can no longer make decisions for yourself. And finally, they put you in a place like this while they manage your estate for your own good." The scheme was perfect in its cruelty. And legal. "Have you never tried to leave?" Carmela smiled bitterly. "With what money do I pay a lawyer? With what legal authority do I prove I'm sane if I already have an official diagnosis saying otherwise? My son is a doctor, you know? He signed the papers himself declaring me incompetent." That afternoon, I received a call that confirmed my worst suspicions. It was Piper, and her voice sounded falsely sweet, like poisoned candy. "Ellie, how are you? Chloe and I have been so worried about you." "Worried," I repeated, savoring the hypocrisy of the word. "So worried that you haven't visited me once in 3 weeks." "Oh, Eleanor, you know we've been very busy. Plus the doctor recommended we give you time to adjust. But I have good news. We've been managing your finances very well. Your savings are growing tremendously thanks to our investments in the stock market." "What investments?" "We bought shares in tech companies with your money. We also invested part in Bitcoin, which is skyrocketing. Chloe says that when we sell it, you'll have enough capital to be comfortable at the residence for the rest of your life." The rest of her life. As if they had already buried me. "And the house?" "Oh yes, I almost forgot. We already put it up for sale. The real estate market is excellent right now, especially in Westwood. With what we get from the sale, plus the investment gains, you'll be practically a multimillionaire, Eleanor. Well, not you directly, because you can no longer manage those amounts of money, but we'll make sure you don't lack anything." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking so much I had to sit on the bed to avoid fainting. Not only had they stolen my present, they were selling my future. That night, I waited until all the nurses were concentrated on the shift change to sneak out to the public phone in the hallway. With the coins I had saved from my weekly allowance, I dialed a number I had memorized for years. Attorney Reed? This is Eleanor Hayes. Yes, the woman who used to clean the offices across the street. I need you to come see me urgently. I have a very serious legal problem. Attorney Marcus Reed had been a silent witness to my years of service in the building where he had his practice. For 15 years, I had cleaned his offices, and he had always treated me with respect, asking about my family, congratulating me on my birthday. He was one of the few men who had seen me as a person, not furniture. Eleanor, are you all right? Where are you? I explained my situation in hurried whispers, fearing a nurse would appear and forcibly return me to my room. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. This is more common than you imagine, he finally said, but there are ways to fight. Do you have documents proving that house is yours? Yes, but they're hidden in the house. Where exactly? In a secret drawer of the desk in my bedroom. I also have a bank account they don't know about. And some jewelry in a safe deposit box. Perfect. I'll come see you tomorrow. In the meantime, don't sign anything else, don't talk to anyone about this, and try to get a copy of the papers that brought you to the residence. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope, but also something more dangerous and more powerful. A thirst for justice. I returned to my room with silent steps. Eliza was waiting up for me, with a complicit smile. Have you started moving, warrior? Just now, I whispered as I slipped under the rough sheets. But they will soon see what it's like to fight a woman who has nothing to lose. For the first time in years, I fell asleep smiling. The next day, the director of the residence called me to his office. He was a fat, sweaty man who ran the place like his personal fiefdom. On his desk was a photo of him shaking hands with local politicians and framed diplomas proclaiming certifications in comprehensive geriatric care. Mrs. Hayes, I've received reports that you used the telephone without authorization yesterday. I wasn't aware I needed permission to make a call. Everything here is done under supervision, for your own safety. Furthermore, your daughters asked us to monitor your communications to prevent you from getting confused or giving erroneous information to strangers. Erroneous information? Well, the director consulted a file. They told us you sometimes invent stories about mistreatment or theft that never occurred. It's part of your mental condition. There it was again. The perfectly constructed narrative of the crazy, problematic elderly woman. Chloe and Piper had thought of everything. They also asked me to inform you that the sale of your house was finalized yesterday. They obtained an excellent price, $2.5 million. With that money and your investment gains, you are secured here for the rest of your life. $2.5 million. The house I had bought with my life savings, which I had maintained and improved for 5 years, had become the fortune of my tormentors. Can I see the sale documents? I'm afraid not. Your daughters have legal power of attorney over all your financial affairs. They handle those documents. I left that office with my legs shaking from rage. But it was no longer the powerless rage of a victim. It was the cold, calculated rage of a woman who had just understood exactly who she was fighting and who had the weapons to win. Attorney Marcus Reed arrived at the residence on a Thursday afternoon, dressed in a gray suit that had seen better days but retained the dignity of a man who had fought for just causes all his life. He carried a worn leather briefcase and a small recorder he placed on the visit room table with the solemnity of someone about to document a crime. Eleanor, before we start, I need you to understand something. What you are about to tell me could completely change your life, but also theirs. Are you sure you want to proceed? Attorney Reed, they already changed my life. They destroyed it. Now, I just want back what is mine. For 2 hours, I told him everything. Every paper signed under false pretenses. Every manipulation disguised as affection. Every lie wrapped in family concern. Marcus took meticulous notes, asked precise questions, and I saw in his eyes the same indignation that had been growing in my chest. The power of attorney they made you sign is valid, he explained when I finished. But there are irregularities. First, you were under the effects of medication when you signed it. Second, you did not have independent legal representation. And third, there is evidence that they already planned to profit from your assets before you were declared incompetent. Does that mean I can get my house back? The house has already been sold, but we can sue for fraud and recover the money. We can also request an independent psychiatric evaluation to demonstrate that you are perfectly capable of managing your affairs. Marcus left that afternoon promising to return with legal documents that would restore my freedom. But not even 24 hours passed before Chloe and Piper appeared like avenging furies. They arrived on a Friday morning, interrupting the breakfast hour with a scene witnessed by all the residents. Chloe was crying, her makeup smeared and her hands trembling. Piper followed with an expression of contained fury, carrying a suitcase I recognized as mine. "Mom!" Chloe screamed from the dining room entrance, causing all heads to turn toward us. "How could you do this to us? How could you hire a lawyer to sue us after everything we've done for you?" I remained seated at my place, slowly chewing my unsweetened oatmeal, and looked at them with the calm of someone who finally understands the game they are playing. "Good morning, Chloe." "Piper, to what do I owe the visit?" Piper approached my table with determined steps and slammed the suitcase down next to my plate. "Here are your important papers, Eleanor. All of them. We don't need them anymore." I opened the suitcase with hands that no longer trembled. Inside were the house deed, my social security statements, receipts from the last 5 years, and a handwritten letter I immediately recognized. It was my handwriting, but the words were not mine. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the letter. "It's your confession," Piper said with a venomous smile, "where you acknowledge that you asked us to help you with your finances because you could no longer manage them alone, that you authorized us to sell the house because you wanted to secure your future. It's signed by you, with witnesses." I read the letter and recognized my signature at the bottom, but I didn't remember writing a single word of the content. Then I realized they had used my signature from other documents and transferred it to this falsified declaration. "Very clever," I admitted without giving them the satisfaction of seeing me defeated. "But you forgot something important." "What?" asked Chloe, drying her tears with the tissue Piper handed her. "That I know how to play this game, too." Piper let out a bitter laugh. "You? Eleanor, you're 68, institutionalized in a psychiatric care facility, and we have legal control over every penny you own. What can you do?" "For starters," I said, standing up from the table with a dignity I didn't know I still possessed, "I can prove this letter is a fake. I can also prove that you drugged me to make me sign the power of attorney. And most importantly, I can show the original deed to the house, which proves I bought it with a family inheritance you never knew existed." The smile vanished from Piper's face. Chloe stopped crying and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since she was a child caught misbehaving. "That's impossible," Piper mumbled. "We checked all your papers when we brought you here. You checked the papers I wanted you to find. But there are things a woman learns after 50 years of work. You always keep an ace up your sleeve." The director of the residence appeared at that moment, drawn by the raised voices. "Ladies, please. You're upsetting the other residents." "Director," Piper said, quickly recovering her professional composure, "I think my mother-in-law is having one of her confusion episodes. She's inventing stories about documents that don't exist." "She is not inventing anything," a voice intervened from the dining room entrance. It was Marcus Reed, accompanied by a notary public and a woman I recognized as being from Adult Protective Services, APS. "Mrs. Hayes, here are the documents you requested." The silence that followed was so dense you could cut it with a knife. Piper and Chloe looked at the lawyer as if the devil himself had appeared. "Who are you?" Piper asked, her voice trembling. "Marcus Reed, counsel for Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, and I'm here to notify you that you are being sued for fraud, elder financial abuse, and falsification of documents." Chloe slumped into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Piper, however, stood up like a cobra ready to strike. "That's ridiculous. We have legal power over all of Eleanor's affairs. She can't hire a lawyer without our authorization." "You are mistaken," said the APS social worker, showing an official folder. We have just conducted an independent psychiatric evaluation of Mrs. Hayes. The results show she is in full mental capacity, and her institutionalization here was irregular. Furthermore, Marcus added, we have evidence that you sold a property that did not belong to you. The Westwood house was purchased by Mrs. Hayes with funds from a family inheritance you were unaware of. The original documents are in a safe deposit box you never had authorization to open. I watched the color drain from Piper's face. Chloe had started crying again, but this time they were tears of genuine panic. That can't be true, Piper stammered. We know all of Eleanor's assets. We manage her investments, her bank accounts. You manage the accounts she allowed you to know about, Marcus corrected her. But Mrs. Hayes is shrewder than you thought. For years she maintained a separate savings account and a safety deposit box with documents and jewelry that prove her true worth. How much money? Chloe asked in a thin voice. Marcus looked at me, waiting for my authorization to continue. I nodded. Between the savings account, the jewelry, and the real value of the house you fraudulently sold, we are talking about approximately $3 million in assets, money you have been illegally managing. Piper staggered as if she had been physically struck. $3 million? But she only had her Social Security, and you assumed that a woman who had worked her whole life as a cleaner couldn't have assets of her own. You were wrong. The notary approached with official documents. Ladies Piper Jensen and Chloe Hayes, you are hereby notified of the lawsuits filed against you. You have 15 days to respond to the court. Chloe burst into hysterical sobs. Mom, please, don't do this. We're your family. For the first time in weeks, I felt compassion for my daughter. But it was the same compassion one feels for a child caught stealing. Pity mixed with disappointment. Chloe, you decided to treat me as if I were dead. Now you are going to discover what it's like to fight a live woman. Piper attempted one last desperate move. Eleanor, we can fix this. We'll split the money. You keep your share. We keep ours. Everybody wins. Split? I repeated, savoring the irony. Like we split the house expenses for 5 years? Like we split the responsibilities when you went out and I stayed home cooking? Like we split the respect when you threw my suitcases onto the floor? That was a mistake, Chloe pleaded. We were stressed. We weren't thinking. No, Chloe. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. The same decision you are making now by facing the consequences. Marcus gathered his documents and addressed the residence director. Sir, Mrs. Hayes will be moved to a hotel today while we sort out her housing situation. Her institutionalization in this facility is voided by court order. I looked one last time at Chloe and Piper, two women who seemed like strangers to me at that moment. I didn't feel hatred toward them, only a profound sadness for everything we could have been and never were. When you get hungry, I told them as the notary helped me with my suitcase, remember that you once knew a woman who worked her whole life to feed others. And I walked out of that place with my back straight, leaving behind not just the residence, but the version of myself that had allowed herself to be a victim. It was time to be the hero of my own story. The Grand Central Hotel in downtown was not a luxury place, but it had something I hadn't experienced in months. Silence. Real silence. Not the silence laden with reproach and scornful glances I had endured at Chloe and Piper's house. It was the silence of a space that belonged to me, even if temporarily. Marcus had secured me a room on the 8th floor, with a view toward the Central Park area. From the window, I could see families strolling among the trees, street vendors offering their wares, the normal life of a city that kept turning while I had been buried alive. It's just temporary, Marcus had told me while helping me settle in. Until we resolve the legal situation, and you can buy a new property. But at least here you have privacy and security. Privacy. That word sounded strange after months of constant surveillance. No one was going to check my phone calls. No one was going to question if I could bathe alone. No one was going to decide what I could eat or when I should sleep. My first night at the hotel, I slept 14 hours straight. 14 hours without waking up to Eliza's moans, without being startled by nurses' footsteps in the hallway, without that smell of disinfectant and despair that had entered my lungs. I woke up at noon on Saturday with a strange feeling in my chest, and it took me several minutes to realize what it was. Tranquility. but the tranquility didn't last long. That same afternoon, while having coffee in the hotel restaurant, my phone started ringing insistently. It was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, the voice was unmistakable. "Mom, it's Chloe." Her voice sounded hoarse, as if she had been crying for hours. "Please, we have to talk. This is getting out of hand. Where did you get this number?" "The lawyer told us which hotel you're at." "Mom, please, give me a chance to explain. It's not how you think." Despite everything that had happened, my mother's heart contracted upon hearing the desperation in her voice. "What do you want to explain, Chloe?" "Everything. From the beginning. We didn't want to hurt you, we just wanted to protect you. And protect ourselves too." "Protect me from what?" There was a long pause before she replied. "From yourself, Mom. You don't realize it, but lately you'd been acting very strange. Forgetting things, repeating the same stories, accusing us of things we didn't do." "That's a lie." "It's not a lie." Chloe's voice cracked. "Mom, you started hiding money all over the house. We found bills and books in flower pots, even in the refrigerator. You told us someone was stealing from you, but we were the ones finding your own money in strange places." For a moment, I doubted myself. Was it possible that I had been acting strangely without realizing it? Was it possible that my memory was failing? Then I remembered something. I had been hiding money around the house, but not due to mental confusion. I was doing it because I had started distrusting Piper after I found bank statements showing transfers from my account to accounts I didn't recognize. I had started keeping cash as a precaution. "Chloe, I was hiding money because I realized Piper was transferring funds from my account without my authorization." "That's not true. Piper only moved money between accounts to optimize returns. She understands investments, Mom. Her firm manages portfolios worth millions of euros for international clients." "And that gave you the right to sell my house without consulting me?" Another long pause. "The house, Mom, the house was falling apart. The roof had leaks. The electrical system was old. It needed repairs that would cost a fortune. We thought it was better to sell it and use that money to secure your future." "My future in an assisted living facility. In a quality residence, Mom. With gardens, with medical attention, with people your age. We thought you'd be happier there." As Chloe spoke, I watched a family at a nearby table. A grandmother was playing cards with her grandchildren while the parents talked quietly. The grandmother laughed with every play, her eyes sparkling with joy, and the children treated her with the affection and respect that every older woman deserves. "Chloe," I interrupted her, "do you ever wonder how I feel? Did you ever care if I was happy?" "Of course I care. You're my mother. I am your mother, but you treated me like your employee. For 5 years I cooked, cleaned, did your laundry, did your shopping, and you never once asked me what I wanted to do with my life. But you seemed happy doing those things. I seemed happy because that was the only way to feel useful in my own home, because I was afraid that if I wasn't serving a purpose, you would discard me. And in the end, you discarded me anyway." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that I thought she had hung up. "Mom," she finally said, "we can still fix this. We can cancel the lawsuits, split the money equally, start over." "Split it equally?" I couldn't help but laugh, although there was nothing funny about the situation. "Chloe, you sold my house for $2.5 million. How much of that money have you already spent?" "We didn't spend anything. Well, almost nothing. Just some necessary expenses." "How much, Chloe?" "Piper invested most of it in Bitcoin and tech stocks. She says the value will triple in the next few years. We bought a condo in Beverly Hills." "You bought a condo for yourselves with my money?" "It was for all 3 of us. It was going to be our new family home, a place that's more modern, more secure." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I had heard enough. That night, while walking the hotel corridors, I caught my reflection in one of the lobby mirrors. The woman staring back was no longer the same one who had left the hospital a month ago. Her shoulders were straighter, her chin firmer, her eyes clearer. She was no longer anyone's victim. The next day, Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I decided what I wanted to do with my day without consulting anyone. I took a taxi to Pasadena Heights, the neighborhood where I grew up, where my mother taught me to be strong. The market in Pasadena Heights smelled the same as it did in my childhood, of fresh flowers, homemade food, damp earth. I walked among the stalls, buying fruit I chose myself, talking to vendors who treated me as a respected customer, not a family burden. At a flower stall, an older woman selling white roses recognized me. Eleanor? Eleanor Hayes? Oh, honey, it's been years. It was Evelyn Garcia, a primary school friend I had lost touch with decades ago. We caught up while she arranged her flowers, and when I told her my situation, she looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. Oh, Eleanor, you are so brave. I wouldn't have dared to confront my children like that. Have you also had problems with your family? All of us old folks have problems, honey. The difference is that you decided to fight, and most of us just resign ourselves. She gave me a bouquet of white roses. For your new beginning, she said with a smile that reminded me why we had been friends in childhood. Back at the hotel, with my flowers in one hand and a bag of fruit in the other, I felt more myself than I had in years. For the first time in a long time, I was hungry. Real hunger. Not the mechanical emptiness of someone who eats out of obligation. That night, I dined in the hotel restaurant, alone but not lonely. I ordered what I wanted: pan-seared halibut, rice pilaf, and black beans. Flavors of my past I hadn't tasted in years because Piper said, traditional cuisine has too many calories and salt. While I ate, I watched the other people in the restaurant. Young couples planning their future, families celebrating birthdays, businessmen discussing investments and returns, all living their lives without asking anyone's permission, as I was going to do from now on. Marcus had explained that the legal process could take months, but in the meantime, I had access to my personal savings account and the jewelry in my safety deposit box. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to live with dignity while I recovered the rest of my assets. That night, before sleeping, I wrote a list on hotel stationery: find a small, comfortable apartment, buy new clothes that I like, take classes in something I always wanted to learn, travel somewhere I've never been, help other women going through what I went through. As I wrote, I realized that for the first time in decades, I was making plans for my own life, not for Chloe's life, not to please Piper, not to meet anyone else's expectations, just for me. The next day, I would start looking for an apartment, a place that was mine, where no one could throw my suitcases onto the floor ever again, a place where I could be Eleanor Hayes, not Chloe's mother or Piper's mother-in-law, just Eleanor. And that, I discovered, was more than enough. 3 weeks after moving into the small apartment in Koreatown, K-Town, that I had chosen for its proximity to downtown and its honest price, Piper appeared at my door. She didn't ring the bell. She used a key. I heard the metallic sound while I was preparing my morning coffee, and for a moment, I thought I had made a mistake with the lock. But when I looked into the living room, there she was, standing in my foyer as if she had every right to be there. How did you get into my house? Piper held up a gold key, smiling with that superiority I knew too well. I told the building manager I'm your daughter and that you were having dementia problems. He gave me a copy for safety. I felt the rage rising from my stomach to my throat, but this time, I didn't let emotion take over. These months had taught me that controlled fury is more powerful than desperation. Get out of my house! No. Piper sat on my new armchair, the one I had chosen myself at a furniture store. We need to talk, and you've been avoiding our calls. I don't avoid them. I ignore them. There's a difference. Eleanor, this has to stop. The lawsuits, the lawyers, all this theater. It's costing a fortune in legal fees. Whose fortune? Piper paused, as if she had said something she shouldn't. Everyone's, the family estate. Are you paying your lawyers with my money? It's our money, Eleanor. We are family. What's yours is ours, and what's ours is yours. I couldn't help but laugh. It was a bitter but genuine laugh. Are you seriously going to tell me that after you institutionalized me to steal everything? We didn't steal anything. Everything we did was to protect you. And now, because of your third-rate lawyer, everything is getting complicated. I sat across from her, maintaining distance. I was no longer the frightened woman who let herself be intimidated by their shouts or manipulated by their fake tears. What do you want, Piper? I want us to be reasonable. Look, we spent some of the house money. It's true. But it was on smart investments. We bought shares in tech companies that have already gone up 30%. We put money into a Bitcoin fund that's generating incredible returns. Your capital is growing, Eleanor. My capital that you stole. We didn't steal it. We managed it. And we are multiplying it. In a year, you'll have twice what you had before. And in the meantime, you come home. Chloe misses you terribly. She cries for you every night. To which home? You sold my house. To the Beverly Hills condo. It's gorgeous, Eleanor. 3 bedrooms, panoramic view, gym, pool. Everything a woman your age needs to be comfortable. A woman my age? Piper realized her mistake too late. I didn't mean, well, yes, an older woman, with nearby medical services, with 24-hour security, a golden prison, a comfortable life. Do you know how much rent you're paying for this place? $400 a month for an old apartment, no elevator, in a questionable neighborhood. We're offering you luxury. I got up and went to the kitchen to pour more coffee. Piper followed me, talking nonstop about investment returns and opportunities in the currency market. Her voice had become desperate, like that of a salesperson who knows they are losing their client. Besides, she said when I returned to the living room, you have to think about Chloe. She's your only daughter, Eleanor. Are you going to destroy her life out of pride? Her life? What about mine? Your life is already lived. You worked. You raised your daughter. Now it's time for you to rest and let us take care of everything. Like you took care of me when you threw my suitcases onto the floor? Piper sighed with impatience. That was a mistake. We were stressed. We didn't know how to handle the situation. But we've learned. Learned what? To treat you better. To consult you on important decisions. To make you feel like your opinion matters. Make me feel, I repeated slowly. Not that my opinion actually matters, but make me feel like it matters. Piper realized she had said the wrong thing again. No, I know exactly what you meant. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Marcus, who had news about the case. When he saw Piper in my living room, his expression hardened. Ms. Jensen, what are you doing here? I came to speak with my mother-in-law about an out-of-court settlement. Without legal representation present, that violates the no-contact order we requested. No contact order? Piper looked at me incredulously. Did you seriously request an order so we can't talk to you? After you entered my house without permission, yes. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. This constitutes trespassing and violation of a court order. Wait! Piper stood up from the armchair, visibly nervous. There's no need to involve the police. I'm leaving. Before you go, Marcus said, I want you to know that we found very serious irregularities in the handling of Mrs. Hayes's funds. Not only did you sell a property that didn't belong to you, but you transferred money to personal accounts without authorization. Those transfers were to optimize investments. They were to pay your personal debts. Marcus corrected her. We have the bank statements. You used Mrs. Hayes's money to pay for the mortgage on her previous condo, to pay off credit cards, and to buy a luxury car. I watched the color drain from Piper's face. That's temporary. It's all documented as loans that we intend to repay. With what money are you going to repay $3 million in loans? Piper fell silent. The answer was obvious. They had no way to repay anything because they had spent my money as if it were theirs. Furthermore, Marcus continued, the Beverly Hills condo you purchased is in both your names, not Mrs. Hayes's. There is no document proving that property was intended for all 3 of you. We can transfer the title. It's too late for that. The damage is done. Piper looked at me with a desperation that might have been moving if I hadn't known what she was capable of. Eleanor, please. Chloe is severely depressed. She's not eating. She can't sleep. She cries constantly. Doctors say if this continues, she might need psychiatric hospitalization. And that's my fault? It's your responsibility. You're her mother. I am her mother, not her victim. There is a difference. Piper moved toward the door but turned one last time. You know what? You're right. Chloe and I made mistakes. But so did you. You were a controlling mother who never let us make our own decisions. You always had to give your opinion on everything. You always had to pry into our business. Pry into your business? I was paying for your business. Exactly. Always using money to control us. I pay the mortgage. I make the rules. I bought this. I have the right to an opinion on that. We got sick of living under your financial thumb. The accusation hit me like a slap. Was it true? Had I used my money to control them? Marcus intervened before I could answer. Ms. Jensen, you are describing exactly what you did to Mrs. Hayes. The difference is that she was paying with her own earned money while you spent hers. It's different. How? Piper didn't answer. She stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door, but not before shouting from the hallway. This isn't over, Eleanor. Chloe is your daughter. You can't just forget you have a daughter. When she left, I stayed seated in my new armchair, trembling, not from fear, but from a mix of rage and sadness I didn't know how to process. Are you all right? Marcus asked. I don't know. Maybe she's right. Maybe I was controlling. Eleanor, there is a difference between setting healthy boundaries when you pay the bills and stealing someone's assets to control their life. What you did was normal. What they did was a felony. But Chloe is my daughter, and you are her mother, not her financial slave. I couldn't sleep that night. Piper's words echoed in my head. Chloe is severely depressed. What if it was true? What if my daughter was genuinely suffering? But then I remembered something Eliza told me at the residence. At our age, you don't get anything back. You just get even. And I remembered something else. During the 5 years I lived with them, how many times did Chloe worry about my depression? How many times did she ask if I was happy? Never. Not once. Maybe it was time for her to learn how that feels. 6 months after the last encounter with Piper, I woke up in my K-Town apartment without the familial burden I had carried for decades. It was a Tuesday in February. The sun streamed through the windows I had decorated with curtains I chose myself, and for the first time in 68 years, I had a day completely free to do whatever I wanted. I didn't have to cook for anyone but myself. I didn't have to clean anyone's mess but my own. I didn't have to worry about pleasing ungrateful daughters or justifying my expenses to anyone. Freedom felt strange at first, like a new pair of shoes that needs time to conform to the foot. Marcus had managed to recover almost all of my assets. The legal process had been long and complicated, but effective. Chloe and Piper had to return the money from the house sale, plus interest and punitive damages. The Beverly Hills condo was seized and sold to cover part of the debt. Piper lost her job when her firm discovered she had used insider client information for her fraudulent personal investments. Justice, Marcus had told me when we signed the final documents. Not revenge, but justice. He was right. But justice tasted sweet. With the recovered money, I decided to do something I had never been able to afford. Live, not survive, not sacrifice for others, but truly live. I enrolled in painting classes at the Community Arts Center in K-Town. For 50 years, I had cleaned offices and other people's homes, but I never had time to create something beautiful with my own hands. The first time I mixed colors on a palette, I felt an emotion I didn't know existed. You have a good eye for color, the teacher, a young woman named Fernanda, who treated all her students with the same respect regardless of age, told me. Have you painted before? Only walls, I replied, and we both laughed. My first painting was a self-portrait. I didn't draw myself as the tired, defeated woman I had been, but as the woman I was discovering I could be. Strong, serene, with eyes that looked forward instead of down. I also signed up for ballroom dancing classes. Ma'am, are you sure? The receptionist had asked when I signed up. The classes are quite energetic. I'm 68, not 88, I replied. And my legs work perfectly. I arrived nervous on the first day, dressed in jeans and comfortable shoes. The other women my age looked at me curiously when the instructor, a man in his 40s named Miguel, invited me to dance. How long has it been since you danced, Eleanor? Since my wedding, 40 years ago. Then it's time to remember what it feels like to be a woman. He was right. In the arms of that stranger who guided me with respect and patience, I remembered that my body was more than a machine to serve others. It was an instrument of grace, expression, and joy. After 3 months of classes, Miguel invited me to a special event, a dance showcase at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. I need a partner who isn't afraid to shine, he told me. Are you up for it? I was. The day of the presentation, I bought a navy blue dress with discreet sequins, had my hair professionally styled, and applied makeup chosen to highlight my own features, not to please anyone else. When I stepped onto that stage and the lights came on, I felt something I had never experienced. Being seen. Truly seen. Not as a mother, not as a domestic worker, not as a family burden, just as Eleanor, a woman who had worth in herself. We danced a passionate and elegant tango. Every step, every spin, every dramatic pause was mine. The audience applauded at the end, but the most important applause was the one resonating within my chest. After the event, while I was changing in the dressing room, I received a text message from an unknown number. Mom, I saw the video they uploaded to Facebook. You looked beautiful. I'm proud of you, Chloe. I read the message 3 times before deciding how to respond. Part of me wanted to call her immediately, invite her for coffee, rebuild bridges. But a wiser part, the part that had learned to value herself, knew I wasn't ready for that. I replied, "Thank you. When you're ready for a real apology, you know where to find me." I got no response, and that was fine. With my new financial freedom, I also decided to travel. I had spent my whole life in the LA area, working to give Chloe opportunities I never had. It was time to give opportunities to myself. My first trip was to Santa Fe, New Mexico, alone. I stayed in a boutique hotel in the historic center, ate at restaurants I chose for their ambiance and food, not their price. I visited museums, bought local art, and spoke with locals who told me stories about their land. In the Santa Fe market, a Native American woman selling textiles asked me, "Are you on vacation, ma'am?" "No," I replied. "I'm discovering myself." She smiled as if she understood exactly what I meant. From Santa Fe, I went to Carmel by the Sea, California, where I stayed near the ocean and spent entire days reading novels I had wanted to read for years, but never had the time. In the evenings, I walked along the beach, feeling the sand between my toes, listening to the sound of the waves that needed no one's permission to exist. One sunset, while watching the sun sink into the Pacific, an older man approached and asked if he could sit in the chair next to mine. "Of course," I said. His name was Robert. He was a widower, 70 years old, and was traveling across the U.S. in an RV he had bought after retiring. "And you?" he asked. "Are you also running away from something?" "No," I replied. "I'm running toward something." We talked until the stars appeared. He told me about his children who lived on the East Coast and visited once a year, about the wife he had lost to cancer, about the dreams he had postponed during 40 years of factory work. "But you look different," he told me. "You look like someone who was just born." In a way, I am. Robert and I stayed in touch after that trip, not as a romantic couple, but as 2 souls who had found freedom in the second half of their lives. He sent me postcards from every place he visited, and I sent him photos of my paintings. Back in the LA area, I decided to do something bigger, use my money to help other women going through similar situations to mine. With Marcus's help, I established a legal assistance fund for older women who were victims of family financial abuse. I named it the Rose Foundation in honor of my mother, who taught me to be strong. The first woman we helped was Carmela, 75 years old, whose children had sold her house while she was hospitalized for a fall. Her case was nearly identical to mine, but she didn't have the resources to fight. "Don't worry about the costs," I told her when she came to the office we had rented in West Hollywood. "Just focus on reclaiming your dignity." Seeing Carmela win her case, seeing her recover not only her money but her self-confidence, gave me a satisfaction I had never felt before. It was different from the satisfaction of seeing Chloe graduate or get a job. This was pure, without expectations of reciprocity, without a hidden agenda. In my first year of freedom, the foundation helped 18 women. Some recovered their assets, others only their peace of mind, but all left knowing that their lives had value regardless of what their families thought. One night, while reviewing the foundation's finances in my apartment, the phone rang. It was Chloe. "Mom." Her voice sounded different, more mature, less dramatic. "Can we talk?" "What do you want to talk about?" "Everything. What we did, what we didn't do, how to fix this." Can this be fixed? There was a long pause. I don't know, but I'd like to try. And Piper? Piper and I separated 3 months ago. Turns out when the easy money was gone, our love faded too. I felt a pang of sadness for my daughter, but not the immediate urge to rescue her that I would have felt before. Where are you living? In a small apartment in Echo Park. I work at a coffee shop. I don't earn much, but it's honest. I'm glad you found honest work. Mom, do you think you can forgive me someday? The question hung in the air between us. 6 months ago, I would have immediately answered yes, of course, that I was her mother, and I would always forgive her. But this new version of me knew that real forgiveness requires more than words. Chloe, forgiveness isn't something that is given. It's something that is earned. What do I need to do to earn it? That's something you have to figure out for yourself, just like I had to figure out how to live without you. I hung up the phone, feeling something new. Cautious hope. Not the blind hope of a desperate mother, but the realistic hope of a woman who has learned to protect her own peace. Maybe someday Chloe and I could rebuild a relationship, but this time it would be on my terms, not hers. This time, I would also have a voice in my own life. 2 years after Piper last walked into my life with a stolen key, I woke up in my new apartment in the West Hollywood neighborhood on my 70th birthday. It wasn't a luxury condo like the one Chloe and Piper had bought with my money, but it was completely mine. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every plant on the terrace had been chosen by me, for me. On the breakfast table were 3 greeting cards. One from Robert, who was now living in Florida but still sending me postcards of his adventures. Another from Carmela, the first woman we helped at the foundation, who had become a close friend. And the third, which had arrived the day before by mail, had my name written in a handwriting I immediately recognized. I opened it slowly. Inside was an old photograph, Chloe and me at her college graduation, back when I still believed my sacrifices had been worth it. On the back, in careful handwriting, she had written, "Mom, forgive me for taking so long to understand what I truly lost. I love you, Chloe." There was no phone number, no address, no desperate plea, just a simple apology and an unconditional declaration of love. It was the most mature thing I had received from her in years. I put the card in my drawer next to the original deed to my house, the same one that had been patiently waiting for the right moment to save my life. Maybe someday I would answer, maybe not. But I no longer felt the desperate urgency to rescue a daughter who had chosen to make me her victim. That morning, like every Friday for the last 6 months, I went to the Rose Foundation office. We had grown a lot since the day we helped Carmela. We now had 3 full-time attorneys, a social worker, and a clinical psychologist specializing in family abuse. In 2 years, we had assisted over 150 older women facing similar situations to mine. Some stories were more dramatic than others, but they all followed the same pattern. Families who saw older women as financial resources instead of human beings with rights and dignity. That morning, Evelyn Garcia, my old friend from the Pasadena Heights market, who had decided to donate part of her savings to the foundation, was waiting for me. "Honey," she said as she signed the documents, "when I see everything you've accomplished, I wonder what would have happened if I had your courage when my family cut me off. It's never too late to stand up for yourself, Evelyn. At 82, it's too late to fight, but it's not too late to help others fight." Her donation would allow us to expand our services to other cities in California. The epidemic of financial abuse against older adults was not exclusive to the LA area. That afternoon, I had my weekly appointment with my therapist, Dr. Elena Rivas. At first, I had resisted the idea of therapy. "I'm not crazy," I had told Marcus when he suggested seeking professional help. "They were the crazy ones." "It's not about being crazy or sane," she had explained. "It's about understanding how you came to allow yourself to be treated that way, so it never happens again." She was right. During our sessions, Dr. E. Rivas had helped me understand that my need to be indispensable had been my greatest weakness. I had confused sacrifice with love and self-denial with virtue. "Eleanor," she said that afternoon as we had tea in her office, "do you realize that you have done more for your daughter in these 2 years of distance than in 40 years of enabling?" "How?" "You have taught her that actions have consequences. that love is not unconditional when it becomes abuse, that mothers are also people with rights and boundaries. It was true. Through my contacts at the foundation, I knew that Chloe was working honestly at a coffee shop, had started therapy, and had cut all contact with Piper. For the first time in her life, she was facing the real consequences of her decisions without anyone rescuing her. That night, I dined at my favorite restaurant in Westwood, a small southwestern place where they knew me by name and treated me like the valued customer I was, not the family burden I had been. While I ate black mole and drank iced tea, I reflected on these 2 years of freedom. They had been the best of my life, but also the most difficult. Learning to live for oneself after decades of living for others is not easy. It's like learning to walk after spending years in a wheelchair. There were moments when I missed having someone to care for, someone who needed me, but I had learned to channel that maternal energy toward the women of the foundation, toward causes that were truly worthwhile, toward projects that generated positive impact without draining my soul. I had also learned that loneliness and being alone are completely different things. For years, I had been lonely in a house full of people who ignored me. Now, I was alone by choice, surrounded by activities and people who enriched my life instead of emptying it. Arriving home that night, I found an envelope under my door. Inside was a handwritten invitation. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the Senior Life Institute invites you to share your experience at our conference, Women Reborn After 60. We know your story can inspire other women to reclaim their worth and dignity. I read the invitation 3 times. I had never considered myself a public speaker, but the idea of sharing my story, of helping other women wake up before it was too late, excited me in a way I hadn't expected. The day of the conference, I dressed in a wine-colored pantsuit I had bought especially for the occasion. I styled my hair, which I now wore short and silver, without dyes to make me look younger than I was. For the first time in my life, my age was a mark of honor, not a source of shame. The auditorium was full of women of all ages. Some older like me, others younger who were probably caring for mothers or grandmothers in situations similar to what I had lived. "Good morning," I began. "My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 70 years old, and until 2 years ago, I believed my worth as a woman depended on how useful I was to my family. I told my story without melodrama, without self-pity, but also without minimizing the pain I had lived. I spoke of the years of unrecognized sacrifice, the moment my suitcases were thrown onto the floor, the months in the assisted living facility, the legal battle, and finally, the freedom I had found by learning to value myself. The most important lesson I learned, I told them at the end, is that it's never too late to reclaim your own life. That love that doesn't include respect is not love, it's habit. And that older women are not disposable objects. We are treasures of experience and wisdom who deserve to be treated with dignity." The applause was long and warm. After the conference, dozens of women approached me to tell their own stories. Some cried, others hugged me. Several asked for information about the foundation. A woman in her 50s, tears in her eyes, told me, "Mrs. Hayes, you just saved my life. I was about to sign papers for my son to handle my finances because I thought it was the right thing to do. Now I understand that I can still be responsible for my own life." That night, back in my apartment, I poured myself a glass of red wine and went out onto my small terrace to contemplate the city lights. In the distance, I could see the corporate towers of Silicon Valley, where Piper was probably still trying to rebuild her ruined career. Closer, the lights of Echo Park, where Chloe was working honestly for the first time in her life. I didn't feel resentment toward either of them. Resentment is a luxury I couldn't afford at 70, but I also didn't feel the need to rescue them. They had made their decisions, and now they were living the consequences, just as I had learned to live mine. My phone rang. It was Robert, calling from Guadalajara, Mexico, a place a U.S. retiree might realistically travel to. "How was the conference, warrior?" "Better than I expected. I think I found my new calling." "What calling?" "Waking up sleeping lionesses." Robert laughed. "That sounds dangerous for those who have been abusing those lionesses." "That's the idea." After hanging up, I stayed on the terrace a while longer, thinking about the entire journey. 2 years ago, I would have considered it impossible to be where I was now. I would have thought that a woman my age couldn't start over, couldn't reclaim her dignity, couldn't become anything more than a victim of circumstances. How wrong I was. The pain broke me, it's true, but light had entered those cracks. And from that light, a version of me was born that I never knew existed. A woman who didn't need anyone's approval to validate her existence. A woman who had learned that self-love is not selfishness, it's survival. As I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, I thought of all the women who were probably going through what I had experienced right now. Women who believed they had no options. That silent sacrifice was their only destiny. That their families had the right to treat them as financial and emotional slaves. I wanted to tell them they were wrong. That it's never too late to wake up. That they have more power than they think. That they deserve respect, not just for being mothers or grandmothers, but for being whole human beings entitled to happiness and dignity. In the end, my story wasn't about revenge or justice, although both had been important. It was about rebirth, about discovering that in the second half of life, the most beautiful chapter can still be written. And as I fell asleep in my bed, in my apartment, in my freely chosen life, I smiled, thinking that maybe, just maybe, my story could inspire another woman to write hers. Because ultimately, we all deserve to be the heroes of our own lives. Have you or someone you know experienced anything similar to what I went through? I would love to hear your experience. Share it in the comments, because maybe your story can help someone else who needs it. And if this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message reaches someone who really needs to hear it.